Hello, hello! Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. It is the last Sunday of the month, so we are looking at religion, and this week's book is not quite religious, but is the world's oldest surviving myth, Gilgamesh. Still on my laptop, as you can tell. This version is by Stephen Mitchell. The accompanying cocktail is a terrifying-sounding White Gilgamesh, which is 1 pint of Leffe Blonde and a half pint of goat milk. I'm actually going to have, I'm not real sure how beer and milk are going to mix. We're going to find out. I'm going to have the recipe because I don't have a glass big enough for, 24 ounces of liquid. So mine's going to be 8 ounces of Leffe Blonde and 4 ounces of the goat milk. So let's do this. So myth informs religion, all right, which is why I picked this one. That and I actually did start reading the Torah, and to be honest, I've known people who have made entire, 2-hour long sermons out of, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Torah is very long. Nice. The Bible's even longer. I have no idea how long the Quran is. I don't know. But there's a lot going in there, and I feel like it would be exceptionally rude to just glibly read through a whole book, the whole thing, even just a single book, even just the book of Genesis, and then try to summarize it. I mean, we're talking thousands of years of humanity's collective knowledge, and it should not be read through and quickly recapped. I think it's meant to be absorbed and mulled over with implications pondered. That's why they're life lessons, right? This is how you learn things. And maybe Gilgamesh was meant for the same. I certainly saw parallels between what I read in this legend and a whole lot of what I've read over the last few years. And I'll see if I can explain those parallels as I go through this. You have to pour slowly because this will fizz up. Let the suds die down. I poured fairly slowly and I still got quite a bit of head on here, so we'll come back to that. Anyways, Gilgamesh is a giant of a man. He is a leader, he is a king. He is 2/3 divine and only 1/3 human, the son of King Lugobanda, who became a god, and the already goddess Ninsun. Now, you do realize that this epic is not completed. I mean, by the time I read the end of it, I'm like, okay, yeah. And not just because, they found another chapter in 2011, which adds to chapter 5 and his battle in the Cedar Forest. We'll come back to that one. But the way it ends, I have no doubt there is more out there. Because chapter 1, it says literally at the very end of the first, book 1, I guess, technically, that on his return from speaking with Utnapishtim, I'm going to mispronounce the hell out of this stuff, who was made immortal for surviving the Great Flood, Gilgamesh brought back ancient forgotten rites, restoring temples that the flood had destroyed, renewing statues and sacraments for the welfare of the people in the land. But this version doesn't include any of what those sacraments and statutes may have been. It ends after he starts his return from Utnapishtim. We don't know what those forgotten rites were, which is a shame because that's probably some really fascinating reading. There we go. There's my 8 ounces of Leffe Blonde, which I'm now going to pour into the bigger cup. It's foaming up even more. Chemistry experiment here. Let the head die down a little bit there. Gilgamesh was the perfect man, right? The strongest, the most handsome, perfect, radiant. He was also an asshole. I mean, he knows he's the king's son, right? He knows he owns everything. The entire city is his. He does what he wants. He's taking sons from their fathers. He's crushing them just because he can. He's using daughters at his whim. And this is basically how far back the concept of prima nocte comes from, right? The king has virginal rights over any new bride. Gilgamesh had those rights, and he exercised those rights exclusively, fanatically. All right, it was his right, and so he exercised it. And the people were rightfully aggrieved by this tyrant. They've got this guy who is the biggest and baddest guy. There's nothing they can do about him. So they cry to the gods asking for help. Help us from this tyrant who rules over us, who we can't do anything about because he's the son of one of yours, right? And the gods hear this plea and they go to Anu, who is the father of the gods, and speak on behalf of the people. They say, please intervene with Gilgamesh the tyrant. He's doing horrible things. Your people are not happy. And Anu agrees. He directs Aruru, who created humans, to make a double of Gilgamesh. Aruru is a goddess, all right? Make a double of Gilgamesh, perfect in every way, equal in every way, to balance out Gilgamesh's assholishness. Make the nice Gilgamesh, kind of like the id of Gilgamesh, if you will. And so she does this, because, she's directed to by her boss, if you will. She obeys. She crafts from the clay of the earth Enkidu, a man, a warrior, hero. He is brave, he is fierce, he is hairy. That's actually the description of him. Quote, hair covered his body, hair grew thick on his head and hung down to his waist like a woman's hair, end quote. He's a child of nature, though. He's not just dropped off in walled Uruk and sent to, fight Gilgamesh. He's running around with the antelope and the deer. He's eating grass. He's drinking from watering holes. He is one of the creatures of the forest. Until one day, a trapper sees him and realizes this is the guy who has been letting the animals out of my traps and filling in the pit traps that I've dug. And the trapper, he's not a big, brave, muscle-bound, heroic man. He's just a trapper who, wants his nightly dinner and a couple of extra skins to sell at market. So he goes to his dad and he says, hey, there is this savage man out there and he's eating the grass and he's letting the animals out of my traps and I don't know what to do about this. How can I make this man go away so I can get back to living my life? And his dad says, go ask Gilgamesh. He's the king in Uruk. He is wise. He'll be able to help you out. I'm going to shake this up while the head finishes dying down on the beer. It says shake well right there. So I'm going to, shake this up. Never had goat milk before. No idea if it's good. But I'm going to use the rest of the goat milk for my coffee the rest of the week. Well, this cup might have actually been big enough to handle the whole thing, but that looks appalling. Clearly not shaking because there's enough carbonation in the Leffe Blonde to make it explode if I tried to shake it up. But here we go. A White Gilgamesh. All right, let's read a little more and then I'll try the White Gilgamesh. So the trapper goes to Gilgamesh, tells him about the savage man living in the forest releasing his traps. And Gilgamesh says, hey, go to the temple of Ishtar, ask for the priestess Shamhat. Take her to the wilderness, have her seduce the man, basically. I mean, a little more flowery than that. And the temple priestesses would, quote, give their bodies to any man in honor of the goddess, end quote. I would not call this a sacred prostitute. Prostitutes accept money. I'm not saying the temple wouldn't accept money on her behalf, but this was a sacred profession back then. This is, men were introduced into adulthood this way. They'd go, if they were having a hard time, they could go and get a quick lay and everybody's happy. Nobody's being beaten for this. This is all normal, part of the society. Let's try this. It's actually not horrible. I'm not sure it's my favorite thing ever, but it's not horrible. I was surprised by that, actually. I'm sure eventually my brain's going to catch up on me and go, oh my God, you're drinking milk with beer, and it's going to rebel. But for now, I'll drink it. It's not awful. It's not awful. I don't know what to say. So Shamhat goes to the trapper and does as ordered. All right, she gets to the watering hole. They wait a couple of days, and Keto eventually shows up, and she seduces him. Not with pretty words. She's basically sitting there playing with herself, and men with porn, he's like, hey, woman playing with herself, and off he goes, and she fucks him into submission. There's literally no other way to put that. That's what happens, all right? He is no longer a wild man after she's done with him. Not quite civilized, but the deer and the antelope now run from him because now he smells like a man, not like one of them. And Shamhat says, well, hey, if you can't run with the deer, why don't you come back with me to Uruk, and I'll introduce you to Gilgamesh. We have a problem with Gilgamesh. He's kind of an asshole. You look like a big, strong man. Maybe you could take him on for us. So, this is what they do. Two things I got out of this one. This is part of the ones where I'm like, okay, here's the thing. That's how old the I can tame him trope of women's romances is, right? I mean, damn. Gilgamesh was discovered in the ruins of Mosul, Iraq in 1844, all right? This is the earliest surviving texts of like mankind's collective history. Dates to 2100 BCE. So that's the longest running fantasy trope of women everywhere, is the I can tame him, I can change him, I can make him a better man. God bless her, Shamhat did it. Turned him into a fucking man. So she does it very well. Talks him into challenging Gilgamesh for supremacy, introduced him to cooked food. He enjoyed bread quite a lot. Blame him. We all enjoy our carbs. And when Enkidu reaches Uruk, he does challenge Gilgamesh, stops him from taking the bride price from a newlywed virgin, challenges him directly, says, hey, that should be my bride price, I'm the better man. While the two are fighting, apparently they both forgot about the virgin bride. Gilgamesh won, but it was not an easy win, and the two became fast friends. And so now Gilgamesh has his companion, who's going to make him less of an ass, basically. After a while of, the two cavorting around Uruk and, sleeping with the prostitutes and eating all the food and doing whatever else royals did back then, Gilgamesh decides that he needs adventure. He needs to go to the cedar forest and kill Humbaba, who is the guardian of the forest and an evil monster. So I'm not at all sure he was evil. See, I see Enkidu coming to Uruk as the civilizing force that women have on men, right? Men were crazy. Women have sex with them and convince them they need to calm the fuck down. Gilgamesh and Enkidu's need to slay the guardian of the forest is man's constant battle with nature, right? It's fear of the unknown, because they call the guardian of the forest evil, and really he's not. He's the protector of the forest because, well, deforestation has apparently always been going on. That's part of, civilization, is you have to build things, but to build up things, you need wood to build with, for example. So they travel for days and days, and each night they camp. Gilgamesh has horrible nightmares that Enkidu always interprets as proof that they'll be successful in their self-imposed mission. I mean, when you get to the end of the story, those nightmares take on a very different significance. We'll circle back to that. Although I gotta say, reading through them, I am not at all sure how Enkidu came up with, this is fine. This is all fine. This is totally normal. We're totally going to win and nothing bad will happen if we continue out of, quote, the mountains fell down on top of us. That was apparently a positive thing. The mountain was Hambubu, apparently. Or lightning flashed, igniting the trees. By the time the flames died out, the ground was covered in ash. It was another dream that Gilgamesh had. But Enkidu did. He managed to turn both of those into a positive spin and said, yes, we're totally going to win this fight. And the two continued on to the cedar forest, where they did fight Hambubu, who even asked for mercy. They fought him to a standstill, and Hambubu asked for mercy, said he would be Gilgamesh's servant, but apparently he's still an asshole. Gilgamesh still killed him. So yeah, conquering nature, right? That's there in the story, right there. Conquering nature. Having successfully killed the evil monster of the forest, Gilgamesh has now drawn the eye of Ishtar herself, the great goddess, the one the prostitute, the temple priestesses all have sex in honor of. It's really not horrible. And the Leffe itself is actually kind of a Swedish ale. Sweet-ish, not Swedish. Sweet-ish. I think it's from Belgium, actually. Yeah, it says subtle notes of vanilla and cloves, which you get. You really do. Belgium. Yeah. This is a product of Belgium. He's drawn Ishtar's eye, and she makes a play for Gilgamesh. Only the civilizing force of Enkidu has now taught Gilgamesh some self-restraint. Or at least Gilgamesh has been paying attention enough to his own religious scriptures that he rejects Ishtar, pointing out that every man she's loved before has been destroyed in the process. There's the negative aspect of the feminine wiles, right? Not all women are civilizing. Some of them can be just as psychotic and bitchy as the men can be. They really were a perfect pair. They probably should have gotten together because they're both assholes. My apologies, Ishtar. I'm not throwing shade at you. I'm just saying. He has a point. You have destroyed every man you've ever had sex with. It's the devouring mother, if you will, right? As Jordan Peterson would say. Ishtar takes rejection very badly, and she goes to complain to Anu and Antu, her mother and father. Anu is the father, right? That Gilgamesh has slandered her, and she demands the bowl of heaven attack Gilgamesh as penance for slandering her. And Anu knows his daughter. He asks her, did he really just slander you? Or did you make a pass at him and he rejected you and now you're pissed about it? And Ishtar's like, no, Daddy, he totally did slander me. I didn't do anything. I didn't make a pass at him. He just started throwing shade at me, kind of like I did a second ago. So I'm really sorry, Ishtar. Please don't throw the bowl of heaven at me. I know I can't take the bowl of heaven. So Anu agrees, and he sends the bowl of heaven, which Enkidu and Gilgamesh destroy, ripping off one of its legs and throwing it at Ishtar. And that night, Enkidu has terrifying dreams of his own mortality. And a lot of those dreams are echoes of the dreams that Gilgamesh had, right, with some of the same monsters. And he wakes up knowing he's dying and that he's going to die, and soon, right? This isn't like a long off distance die. He's going to die soon, and he knows it. Then immediately proceeds to die over the course of 12 days, cursing the huntsman who found him and cursing Shamhat for bringing him to civilization. And I read that and I thought, well, that's typical, right? Man blames woman for his own choices. He absolutely could have walked away and returned with the deer and the antelope and not been like, porn, let's go have sex. But he didn't do that. He watched the porn, he had the sex. This is what men do. And then blamed the women for their choices. He wanted what she offered. And now it's her fault that he made that choice. Fortunately, and in a twist I did not see coming, the protector Shamash, not Shamhat, Shamash, hears this cursing and calls Enkidu on his bullshit. Points out she gave him bread and beer, introduced him to his greatest friend who he would never have met if not for Shamhat. Didn't see that coming. I also didn't see that Enkidu would agree with him and instead bless Shamhat. So, thank you, Shamash. Thank you. That was wise of you. I appreciate wisdom. And then he dies. So he blesses Shamhat and then he dies. And Gilgamesh is completely distraught. He's thinking of his friend returning to clay and rotting away to nothing. So he builds an enormous shrine for Enkidu and then announces to his people that he is moving to the wild. He's going to go become Enkidu pre-Shamhat. He will roam with matted hair and a lion skin and be a wild man. And off he goes. He's fearing his own mortality in the face of Enkidu's death, and he's eventually wandering his way into the mountains, where he determines that he's going to find his ancestor Utnapishtim, who survived the Great Flood. That's how the story started, and was granted immortality by the gods. And after passing through the mountain where the sun rests, Gilgamesh meets a tavern keeper, Chidori, at the edge of the ocean. And she sees him and thinks he looks like a wild man, an impression he does nothing to dissuade by threatening to smash her locks and break down the door. But they talk it out, and he admits to being terrified of death and seeking Utnapishtim. And she directs him on how he can get there. She said, contact Utnapishtim's boatman, Urshanabi, and his stone men, and they'll get you to Utnapishtim. And in keeping with the stellar first impression he's making on the land of the gods, he immediately smashes the stone men, and Urshanabi says, hey, they were the ones who are going to take us across the, who powered the boat across the waters of death. It is literally death to touch this water. So, but you know what? Hey, I got it. You cut down 3 trees, make large branches out of them, trim them for rowing, and I'll pilot the ship, you row, and together we'll make it across the ocean to Utnapishtim's place. And Gilgamesh talks to Utnapishtim, asking him how he attains immortality. And here we get what is very possibly the very first written flood myth. Now understand, societies all across the planet have flood myths, all right? So clearly, which makes sense. It's a natural disaster that occurs even today, right? I mean, hell, a year ago we had those floods, those horrifying floods in Texas, right? This is a worldwide phenomenon. It makes sense there are going to be flood myths the world over. But there are a lot of similarities with the Noah story. Enlil becomes enraged with humanity and decides to wipe them out. He swears all the other gods to secrecy on the matter. One of the gods, Ea, whispers what was about to happen to a reed fence behind which sat Utnapishtim. And Utnapishtim paid attention, so he builds a big boat on which he puts pairs of animals. Sound familiar, right? Now, unlike Noah, he also saved artisans, craftsmen, and scholars, the people who would be needed to rebuild the society, not just his family. So that was good thinking. And at first, Enlil's pissed. He's like, what the hell, man? All humans are supposed to be dead, and yet here we find this boat of people surviving. What happened? And Ea, the cleverest of gods, who whispered the secret to a fence, wisely told Enlil, quote, you are the wisest and bravest of the gods. How did it happen that you so recklessly sent the great flood to destroy mankind? It is right to punish the sinners for their sins, to punish the criminal for his crime, but be merciful. Do not allow all men to die for the sins of some. Quite a bit of wisdom in this book, right? Yeah, you don't punish everybody because some people are assholes. You punish the ones who are guilty. Mercy to the guilty is tyranny to the innocent. And Enlil understood this. He's like, you're right. And for his wisdom in listening to what was being whispered on the other side of the reed fence, Enlil grants Utnapishtim and his wife immortality. Now, Gilgamesh listens to all of this, but it does not help him with his own fear of imminent death, right? Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 7 days, all right? He's like, maybe if you can start by conquering sleep, you might be able to conquer death. And Utnapishtim does this knowing full well that as soon as he sits down, Gilgamesh is falling asleep. And the man just ran for 12 hours straight, rowed across an immense ocean. There's no way he's staying up for 7 more days. But he also knows that Gilgamesh is going to deny having fallen asleep. He's going to say, no, I was just resting my eyes, right? I wasn't sleeping, I was just resting my eyes. So Utnapishtim tells his wife to bake a loaf of bread for every day that Gilgamesh sleeps. And when he wakes up, there are 7 loaves of bread next to him in various states of staleness and decay. And Gilgamesh becomes forlorn all over again. He's worried about how he's going to wither away to dust and clay and just one day be gone. And Utnapishtim gives him one piece of hope. He advises him to dive down to the bottom of the ocean and harvest a particular spiny plant which will restore him to youth and glory. And this Gilgamesh does. And then in a moment of either supreme wisdom or supreme cowardice, he does not take it right away. Now, it could be seen as wisdom to pause and reflect if this is a smart thing to do. Do I really want to relive all of life? Because what might I gain from this? Or it could be extreme cowardice because he determines he's going to take it home and feed it to an old man first to see if it works. Bad news for Gilgamesh, it totally works. Even worse news, he finds out while on his way home, he sets the plant down so that he can build a fire or sleep or something, and a snake eats it. So he ends up knowing that yes, it works because the snake sheds its skin as it slithers away and is rejuvenated into youth, and now he has no plant. and no way of getting back to where it was. He couldn't find the exact spot again unless Utnapishtim told him, and it's really doubtful Utnapishtim's going to do that. So with that, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, and the epic as we now have it ends. And we're still going to get a next chapter before George R.R. Martin finishes The Song of Ice and Fire. You just know it. This was an interesting foray into ancient literature, and it was genuinely interesting to see just how far back certain literary tropes go, and the wisdom of the ancient gods, right? And you don't punish the innocent for the crimes of the guilty, and the folly of the ancient gods, because Anu knows his daughter, and he still gave Ishtar the bowl of heaven, even though he totally knew that she 100% made a pass at Gilgamesh and was rejected, and she was just hurt, basically. Yeah, you don't punish the innocent for the crimes of the guilty. This is a theme that is due for a revival. We're coming back. We're coming back, people. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys next Sunday. Bye.